Welcome to Up Your Nerd Cred. Did you used to know everything that was happening in the Marvel and DC universes? Did finding out that some superheroes are from Marvel and some are from DC blow your mind? Has keeping track of everything that's happening there and then realizing that we're not talking about the comics universe, we're only talking about the cinematic ones, and all these different universes with their multiversal crises have gotten out of hand? Well, don't worry. Up Your Nerd Cred is here to talk about the gods cosplaying as men, and men cosplaying as gods, and how much the cinematic universes are really leaving out. At the end of each episode, you'll hopefully know a little more than you did and can up your nerd cred. I'm your casual host, Cece. It recently occurred to me that both the Chris Evans and Michael B. Jordan versions of Johnny Storm were heading out in the void in Deadpool and Wolverine, and I don't actually know where people post that kind of fanfic anymore. It's probably for the best. I remember when those fanfics were called lemons, and I don't need my algorithm thinking that I have some weird vitamin C deficiency. I'm here to ask the questions about what it is that the casual nerd might have missed.
And I'm A.M. Diaz, who may or may not have an unhealthy obsession with mutants and boy wonders, depending on which therapist you talk to. And I'm pretty sure they moved off of fanfiction.net. I think it's AOC or something like that now. But I'm here to over-explain minor pedantry and the most obscure characters and plot points, just making sure I've earned my gay comic geek uniform.
You know, he has never done drag, and yet he can do a perfect contour with his eyes closed. He's also our resident expert nerd, so I'll be asking him all kinds of burning questions each week. But I think one of the first things that we should talk about is, what are we nerding out about this week? Now, as a reminder, listeners, you can nerd out about all kinds of things. It doesn't need to be just heroes and villains. I mean, look, your favorite TV show has layers. Some royal was hooking up with someone in the 1600s, and there are gardeners who treat their plants like they're caring for the One Ring or something. So, AM, what are you nerding out about this week?
Nerding out's one way to put it. I'm currently getting ready for, as we previously mentioned, the Uncanny Experience, which will be happening in July the 12th and 13th in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Ooh. And I have been approved for a class that I will be teaching, quotation marks. We will be introducing Nightcrawler's Drama 101.
Ooh.
It will be officially called the Meet Monologues, where students who are attending the event will be allowed to write and perform their own monologues about how their powers manifested. So it could be comedic, it could be dramatic, it could be weird, and they'll get up there and perform it in front of an audience.
Is this akin to monologues about a certain anatomical part?
It could. I mean, if your powers manifested in a tail, like a certain blue fuzzy elf, well, who's to say?
I mean, I've seen the musical Teeth, so powers can manifest in all kinds of interesting ways.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what the students come up with. Because some students might dress up like traditional X-Men, but a lot of them, I imagine, are creating their own characters. So I'm excited to see what the audition process brings.
Hard saying, but also, side note, there was an Emma Frost that I saw at a con who was really sad because people kept calling her Storm because she was black. Please, guys.
I saw that too.
Emma Frost and Storm are not the same. You can cosplay as Emma Frost if you're black.
100%, and her costume didn't even look like Storm at all.
Really
it was the traditional sexy Teddy outfit with the cape, the long blonde hair.
It was so blonde. It wasn't even white blonde. It was just generic blonde.
It wasn't platinum. It was Emma Frost blonde.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so I saw that, and shout out to Gail Simone, who gave this cosplayer just so much love and attention. She posted about her on her Blue Sky and was just saying, follow this amazing cosplayer. She did such amazing work, and Gail Simone, who will be a member of staff at the Uncanny Experience, we love you, and you are amazing, and we support every single thing you do.
We are absolutely going to make sure that we clip out this section so that we can tag Gail Simone and tell her how much we love her, because realistically speaking, somebody has to make sure that people know about where the women in refrigerators trope came from, because, oh my goodness, that was...
Gail Simone is the current writer for Uncanny X-Men, so pick that up. And if you ever want to be on the podcast, Gail, we would be happy to have you.
Oh, we would love to have you on the podcast. So I am nerding out about slightly less exciting thing, so to speak. I'm living my most toddler mom life. The kid has discovered Daniel Tiger. And I have never seen him just like decide that this was the best thing ever with anything else. The kid loves coloring, he loves singing, dancing, he loves all kinds of things. He really like used to be all about Sesame Street and Elmo and everything, but now he's just like, actually no, I need Daniel Tiger.
Okay, so I'm too old for this and without children's, but isn't Daniel the Tiger kind of a spin-off of Mr. Rogers' show?
So it's actually all from the Fred Rogers organization or something like that. They work
Okay.
together to put it together. But it's super cute. So it's Daniel Tiger, it's Prince Wednesday, and all of the people from the land of make believe are really fully realized. But Daniel Tiger is also a small child, and so he's like a little bit older than my actual kid is, and so I think my kid is just having an awesome time with the animals and such that he's seeing because, Daniel Tiger does have a mix of humans and animals. But I mean, he's having a really good time. And also, it's possible that he's just watched too many of the same Sesame Street.
Hey, so I'm remembering Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and I just remember the humans interacting with the Land of Make-Believe characters.
Mhm.
Are there just like giant human kaijus walking around the world, or what? I'm just kind of picturing a Mr. Rogers, but it's kind of like Godzilla.
Yeah, so now you're turning Mr. Rogers into more like Attack on Titan, and I feel like that's depressing because Mr. Rogers was lovely and Attack on
I
Titan
didn't
was.
say he was going to destroy the city. I just meant like he's kaiju size. You're
It's
the one who's
very
turning it
difficult.
into a horror film.
I'm just saying, like, it's difficult for like a kaiju to like, delicately step around and make sure that they're not like.
I mean, you watch enough Power Rangers, and those monsters are surprisingly good about walking around the buildings instead of always running through them.
You know what? That's polite of them.
It's only really when the fight scenes happen that they start like running into buildings.
I'm not gonna lie, I have missed a lot of like the Power Rangers past, I want to say Zeo, but I know that the lore continues on, so we're gonna have a
30
whole Power
years.
Rangers Day, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, let's take a quick break and we will move on to our main topic of the day. Hi, welcome back. So, the question burning me up this week is Tony Stark really a father figure or more of a dad bod? Okay, so this past weekend was Father's Day, and of course, it got me thinking about the MCU dad that Tony Stark is. For his proper introduction, we are speaking of Iron Man, whose government name is Anthony Edward Stark. He was created by Stan Lee, Larry Lieber, Don Heck, and Jack Kirby, and debuted in Tales of Suspense number 39 in December 1962. Other main character today is Spider-Man, whose government name is Peter Benjamin Parker, and he was created by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko and debuted in Amazing Fantasy number 15 in June 1962. All right, so introductions aside, we've seen Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony practically adopt Tom Holland's Peter Parker and have a lot of deep paternalism for him. I mean, the kid had a whole backup set of Iron Legion for him that Tony didn't say anything about until the ferry incident. He came from around the world just to reprimand him. And look, if we talk about Infinity War and Endgame, someone's going to end up crying, all right?
Mr. Stark, I don't feel so good. There it is.
We also know that, like, he was Mr. Dadman to Morgan as well. Mr. I Love You 3000. He specifically refused to let any part of, like, the endgame time heist to impact her conception, which I completely get it. I contend that people who say that they don't remember what their life was like before they had a kid are lying. I absolutely remember what my life was like before I had a kid. Are you kidding? Deciding last minute to see a
Sleep.
movie? Sleeping? I met husband guy doing karaoke at a bar on a Thursday night. So, yeah. Movie Tony was perfectly cast as RDJ. And I mean, but comics Tony is more RDJ in his early career. I mean, Demon in a Bottle is a really
Yeah.
famous storyline. Is he a dad type?
Honestly, I mean, MCU one, he became one as the story progressed, especially with Peter's introduction. You saw him become more protective and daddy about him in the actual father sense and not in the daddy sense.
That's a
Despite
completely
what the
separate,
internet might think sometimes.
conversation. We are
Yeah.
not going on that fan fiction site right now.
Yeah, if you do Daddy Tony, make sure you have your safe search on. But Yeah, comic book Tony. Well, it's always really hard with him, just because of the fact that every writer has a different idea about what they want to do with the story. Sometimes he's an optimist, sometimes he's pessimistic, sometimes he's heavily self-destructive, other times he's a fascist, other times, it
Oh,
shifts constantly. So Tony taking on a fatherly role, though, is. I mean, some people might disagree with me on this, but it was kind of more created for the MCU, especially
okay.
with Peter being written as a child, a literal child. He was, what, 15, 16 when the first movie came out, roughly?
Presumably. I mean, he's a high schooler. I don't think he was a
Yeah.
freshman, so yeah.
Yeah, so he was probably like a freshman or sophomore in the first movie, I would imagine.
I think he was a sophomore because he asked out a senior, and that was a big to do. So irrelevant, not the point.
But the thing is, it's just like that was his relationship with Tony was very much focused on the fact that Peter was this child who, let's be honest, Tony should never have like recruited him for the fight with Captain America. That
What? Are
was
you suggesting that
grossly
a
irresponsible.
30, 40 something year old man just being like, hey, you know what? This random teenage boy that I know is very
He
useful for
didn't
this
even
fight?
know him.
Okay, this random teenage boy is even more useful for this fight situation?
And it's like, don't get me wrong, I love that movie, and Spider-Man's appearance was so great. But when you really stop and think about it, it's like, really, Tony, with all the super-powered beings out there, decided to recruit a 15-year-old novice to fight a living legend like Captain America and his group of insanely powered buddies. Choices.
But I will remind you of the fact that he just like grabbed Bucky's vibranium arm and was just like, oh, let me just like play with
I'm
this,
not
like la la
I'm
la.
not saying Peter wasn't amazing in that film. I'm just saying from a purely Child Protective Services.
I feel like Aunt May has gotten enough. Okay, she's gone through enough.
Oh, not against her, against Tony.
Well, I mean, she is the legal guardian. She's the one in charge
Yeah,
of
but
him.
they lied to her about what was going on in Germany. But anyways, comic book Tony, on the other hand, he never had that relationship with Peter. Peter was a full-blown adult by the time that, him and Iron Man really started developing any kind of connection.
Mhm.
And that connection really started around, I'd say, the early 2000s, post Avengers Disassembled.
Okay.
Which, long story short, it was the Scarlet Witch goes evilly insane storyline. And
Yeah.
Avengers break up. They decide to rebuild the Avengers. And Iron Man recruits Peter by saying, we have money. And Peter's response is, oh, thank God. See,
Look.
that boy is always poor because Marvel won't let him mature.
He's got bills to pay, and, he's
Yeah.
not.
And I've got an entire rant about how Marvel treats Peter. But anyways,
That's not the issue.
yeah, in Civil War, Tony and
Not the Civil War is
the comics.
is the comic storyline.
Yeah,
Okay.
so after the new Avengers got teamed up, eventually it led to the ideology shift, splitting between Captain America and Iron Man.
Right.
Unlike the movies where it was the Ultron incident and what happened in Sokovia where Scarlet Witch inadvertently killed civilians trying to save them from a bomb, unlike all that stuff,
Mhm.
in Civil War, it was because a reality TV show group of superheroes fought against a villain who basically blew up an entire town of people.
I'm sorry. All of this happened because there was a reality show jerk who got a little bit too, okay, great. A little bit too much power.
Not a jerk, an entire team of superheroes who were doing a reality TV show.
Okay.
Yeah, and the incident, killed hundreds of people. Avengers, X-Men, Fantastic Four all went there trying to help. And kind of similar to like what happened in Civil War, the movie, a mother told off Iron Man about, superheroes being regulated and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that also led to the government deciding to force all superheroes to register. And
I feel like we have not had historically a good situation whenever we're like forcing large groups of specific people to register. It's a whole.
Yeah, and that's how Captain America felt about that too. So that created this conflict between their Civil War. Meanwhile,
I mean, he started out punching Nazis. Like literally, his first issue was him punching Hitler in the face, even though Red Skull is the villain. This guy does not like any kind of like Nazi stuff whatsoever.
uh-huh.
We're not going to say anything about what's happening in the current state of America. We're just going to say that Chris Evans
Yeah,
was a
let's
fantastic
let's
Captain
not jump into
America.
that rabbit hole because we're trying to have some escapism here right now.
Yes, yes. So they split up because they had different opinions about how they wanted
And
to manage registration.
yeah, and the heroes, essentially anybody who was like Avengers and Fantastic Four, started picking sides about how they felt about the idea of the forced registration.
Hmm.
X-Men, meanwhile, were dealing with their own shit, and they're just like, just leave us the hell alone because we know what happens when you try to register, people. Yeah, Emma Frost was basically, not my circus, not my monkeys.
Is this Senator Kelly being antagonistic to the mutants? I feel like that's a constant like kind of thing, though. Senator
Oh
Kelly
yeah, no,
being antagonistic.
that's been hanging over the X-Men's heads for ages. But anyways, going back to Peter and Tony.
Yes.
During the Civil War period, Tony had taken kind of a mentorship role.
Hmm.
But I wouldn't call it a father figure because, again, Peter was
A full-grown
largely
man.
a full-grown adult, and it was almost like, I would almost argue, like big brother or cool uncle kind of scenario.
Okay, I can get that behind that.
And, Tony eventually convinced Peter to side with the Registrations Act, and this caused Peter to go open with his secret identity. He revealed himself to the world, and everybody knew Spider-Man was Peter Parker since he was 15 years old.
That seems like a terrible idea.
It really was, because Iron Man had promised that they would be able to protect Peter and his family if Peter went public. This, in fact, did not really happen. Long story short, Peter started to realize that he had made a mistake siding with, registration. But, oh yeah. And it ended up with his villains starting to target him and his family. In particular, the Kingpin, who hired an assassin to murder Aunt May.
I mean...
Well, actually, Kingpin hired him to murder Spider-Man, but they shot Aunt May instead. And that led to a whole shitstorm involving the devil and selling of marriages. But let's just say, all that being said, Tony and Peter, their relationship did not turn father and son, especially after that. It turned very antagonistic, blame-gamey, and they've more or less, buried the hatchet, but the two of them do not really have a super close father-son dynamic in the comics at all.
Like, even so, I feel like Ultimate Spider-Man tends to be more the high school age, right? Is that the...
Yeah, that one went back to Peter being in high school, like the original Jack Kirby, or not Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko and Stan Lee comics.
Okay. So, I mean, maybe did Ultimate Spider-Man have?
Not really. Ultimate Spider-Man, his mentor figures often fell more into, like, Nick Fury or sometimes Captain America, but to a more...
Which
Let's
Nick
just
Fury?
say the Ultimate Captain America was a lot less adorkable, golden retriever energy, Chris Evans, and more borderline jingoistic product of his time, Captain America.
Yeah, that's...
Well, the writer who was working on the Ultimates comic, he's got a very interesting approach to storytelling that can involve making characters into really unlikable people. Also, a lot of cannibalism.
What?
Oh yeah, a lot of cannibalism.
No, you're gonna have to cycle back on that. You can't just drop random cannibalism in there.
Yeah, we'll have to have an episode about the Ultimates universe at some point.
Okay, so but which Nick Fury is it? Is it white Nick Fury or black Nick Fury?
The Ultimates universe was what introduced the idea of the black Nick Fury.
Okay.
They were actually, before he was even cast in the MCU movies, they had started drawing Nick Fury like Samuel L. Jackson. So it's partially because of... One thing we could say that the Ultimates did well is it gave us Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury.
Well, yes, because they need somebody who does not look like a bitch. I mean, I'm not saying that the original style Nick Fury looked like that. I'm just saying, the Nick Fury that we have is not going to deal with any motherfucking snakes on a motherfucking plane.
I mean, the original Nick Fury would have been the same way, but he would have been more like sexy daddy pirate dude. I don't know.
I feel like sexy daddy pirate dude is, we've got Reed Richards for that kind of vibe thing without necessarily the eye patch. Anyway, no, cycling back. So Tony was never really just like a father figure, even within the Ultimates universe when Peter was a teenager. There's
Yeah,
no
him and
like
Peter
any.
didn't have much interaction that I remember from the Ultimates line. But to be fair, I wasn't really reading much with the Avengers in the Ultimate
Mhm.
line. I was more X-Men until that went off the rails, and then the Spider-Man comics were the only consistent one I read.
Okay. So we have I actually want to cycle back to the whole like demon in a bottle storyline and basically why it is that Tony as a whole as a person is not really like Mr. Dadman because again, like Demon in a Bottle is one of the more well-known Iron Man storylines. Is this the one? I think it's the one though like where does his own suit kidnap him at this one?
I mean, no.
Which one is the one where his own suit kidnaps him?
God, it's happened a couple of times. That's the thing.
Never mind. But anyway, yes.
His suits being hacked and stuff like that is unfortunately a reoccurring issue with Iron Man, if I remember correctly. But keep in mind, it's like remember, I'm the expert quotation marks, but I have blind spots with certain characters.
That's fair. But Tony Stark had like a very real and active alcohol problem within the actual like comics and such. They don't really touch on that much in the MCU, but
No,
comics
well,
Tony was.
when Tony was introduced, he was created to be because of the era of the time where it was very much the youth culture was actively fighting against like capitalist businessmen and all this stuff. Stan Lee had decided he wanted to create a character who was everything kids would hate, but make him into a likable character. Yeah.
A
And with
sympathetic billionaire? Okay.
a sympathetic a-hole. And with being a rich businessman, Tony was very much a party boy. He was a playboy, so he drank a lot and stuff.
Philanthropist and
Yeah, but then
all
with
that
the
jazz.
Demon in the Bottle storyline, this was around the time where they started to delve into more darker themes because the Comic Code Authority was starting to wane a little bit more, so they were starting to go for more social commentary. This was also around the same time that over in DC, they were doing stories like Green Arrow's sidekick Speedy having a heroin problem, where Green Arrow and Green Lantern took a trip around the United States and dealt with social issues like racism and systemic violence and systemic bigotry and all this stuff.
So they have an extra sort of like renaissance of, hey, we actually have a meaning and a purpose to this kind of stuff. Stuff's happening. Also, the
Yeah.
90s were just like a lot. I'm assuming this is
And
in the 90s.
80s, I believe. If I
Really?
Yeah, well, it was like the 70s and the 80s where they really start to change the approach to comic storytelling. Because before that, like the Silver Age was
Mhm.
very much where the comic code was in full-blown thing. So you couldn't have a lot of like dark adult stories. It had to be the villains always had to get their comeuppance. They either had to die or go to jail. Uh, no anything queer, anything sexual. This was around the time like characters like Catwoman were not allowed to appear in comics for a while. And
Wait,
then
Catwoman was not allowed? I
oh
guess
yeah,
the cat suit is too risque.
she was a femme fatale, and they didn't want to show like this Batman's love interest being this sexy but evil criminal. So Catwoman's got a lot less attention, during that era. And when she did appear, it was in fewer appearances compared to what she could have had.
See, the comics code has like ruined so many really great stories and such. And
Actually, Diamond in the Bottle was 1979. The 70s was around the time where they started to tell those kinds of more adult stories because the Comics Authority had laxed just enough that they felt like they could get back to that.
so with the comics code, they're the reason that we had like some of the more ridiculous villains that were out there.
Oh yeah.
Um, Like, were the villains actually able to even do anything? Or were they just like, ha, I am a weird person who has like a special interest?
I mean, basically, if you watched the Adam West Batman cartoon, or not cartoon,
Mhm.
live action series, the plots that they kind of had in that show were kind of the plots that they were doing during the Silver Age, during the Comics Authority.
Mm.
So it was very much elaborate schemes to capture and rob and stuff like that. But,
But
murder
Eartha
was,
Kitt.
yeah. Well, I mean, television was different than comic books at the time, so.
Sure, that's fine.
But they started to, those rules, but only involving certain, like, social commentary things. For example, gay characters were still not allowed in comics at the time.
We don't talk about gay people here.
Yeah.
We have to bury all of them or something.
Yeah. And, for Marvel, I mean, Marvel was always different than DC. They did not toe the line as much as DC did. They were more willing to still tell more adult stories, but they still had to adhere to the comic code to a certain extent.
Okay. So,
but they usually kept the heroes pretty, like, well adjusted as much as they could.
mhm.
But in the 70s and 80s, that's when they started to really do the darker storytelling. So Iron Man became an alcoholic. Captain Marvel eventually also was an alcoholic. Carol Danvers.
Mhm.
Different stories like that. Stuff they did to Daredevil. I mean, if you watched the Netflix series,
Mhm.
that's nothing compared to what he's gone through in the comics.
I mean, you know what? No, I'm not. We will talk about Daredevil and the stuff that he has gone through in a bit because it sounds like something that the cinematic universe is leaving out. Because like I knew that he had
Not leaving
had
out so
plenty of
much as
stuff that
toning
he's had.
down.
Okay, I feel like that counts. Toning it down counts.
Oh,
So
yeah.
on the front though, like cycling back to like the whole Tony Stark father figure thing. So he and Aunt May probably never really like kind of like how much like path crossing did he and Aunt May actually do then? Because to a certain extent, like, as Peter Parker's relevant authority figure, did he talk to May about stuff like, hey, tell your boy to get himself together or like anything like that?
Like in the comics or in the movies?
In the comics. In the movies, I mean, he was flirting with our current Aunt May, but
Uh-huh.
that's probably actually she's no longer with us. I'm so sorry. That is a spoiler for a movie that
Uh,
came out a couple of years ago, so apologies. Yeah. She was
Marissa
fantastic.
Tomei, you were brilliant in that. All right. But
Yes.
so in the comics, Tony and Aunt May, their relationship is drastically different because for one thing, in the comics for the longest time, Aunt May and Iron Man almost, as far as I can think, never really interacted prior to the events of the New Avengers post disassembled storyline. Because, Peter was very much trying as actively as he could to separate his superhero life from his, normal life. So
Okay.
Aunt May would every so often like meet Captain America or something like that, but she wasn't like an active part in Peter's superheroics thing because she didn't even know Peter was Spider-Man.
Wait, did she find out at some point or?
This is the thing. So she has found out off and on at different points. And prior to Avengers Disassembled, there was a storyline where Aunt May finally discovered officially that Spider-Man was Peter. She
Okay.
came home one day and found Peter beaten up, broken, like in bed, sleeping, and she found the Spider-Man costume and suddenly like 10, 20 years of lies and, issues just suddenly come, and she's like, crap.
That feels like a lot.
Oh yeah,
That
because
feels
I
like a
mean,
lot all at once.
yeah, because it's like Peter's age is weird. It's like sometimes he's like it feels like he's in his 30s. Sometimes it feels like he's in his 20s still. So, but May realized what happened, and she had to go through a process, come to accept it, and told Peter it's like I know, and so she became part of Peter's life
Okay.
as Spider-Man, and the normal stuff.
So slightly more accepting than Joyce was when she found out that Buffy was a Slayer.
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, she wasn't exactly happy about it because she spent a lot of time, like, unlike a lot of versions of May, or comic May, for a long time really hated Spider-Man. She thought she believed everything that the Daily Bugle was saying about him.
Did she think that he was a menace?
She was a Fox News fan before Fox News.
I was not gonna say it. I was not gonna say it, but also I'm pretty sure that like the Bugle is one of those places that's absolutely gonna have that kind of ticker. Like
Yeah,
I know that Alex Jones got really mad about realizing
he
that,
was being made fun
but
of.
yes, but also like, hey Alex
Yep.
Jones, how about the fact that you are secretly in the MCU? That's anyway.
Let's not talk about him.
No, 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 ignoring him.
Yeah,
But,
but eventually, May became aware that Peter was Spider-Man.
mhm,
Then the disassembled and new Avengers thing happened, and part of the thing that kind of made Peter and Tony bond
mhm.
more in the comics was the fact that Tony invited not just the Avengers to move into Avengers Tower, he also invited Aunt May and Peter's wife Mary Jane.
That's nice.
So MJ and May were both living in the tower. They were interacting with all the Avengers. But keep in mind, unlike MCU Avengers, Aunt May is honestly far older than you would expect for being Peter's aunt.
I mean, from what I've seen of her in the comics, she and Agatha Harkness, like
Oh yeah,
like old lady Agatha Harkness, could sit there and like trade stories from whenever.
yeah. And May looked ancient and decrepit in her first appearance. Like, she looked like she was about 50 years older, if not more, than Peter, honestly.
Okay, because I was gonna say, like, you cannot say that 50 looks old and decrepit. We are too close to
Oh, no, no,
that.
no. I'm saying just like, but you also have to remember this was like the 1960s when Peter was introduced, and people did not age the way they do now.
That's true. And also, we are not actually anywhere close to that. I am 40. I am
Yeah.
40. I'm nowhere close to 50.
Yeah, because May, when the original comics came out, May was like pre-World War child, Great Depression era, probably.
Wait, so how did Peter manage to like not live like the most hoardy life of just like you gotta make sure you eat a little extra?
Oh, she
Like
was
how
always
was
trying to do that.
okay. I'm just
But
like how was he skinny?
but the thing was like because of May's age and all that stuff, she wasn't like the Marissa Tomei, young cool aunt that we got.
Hmm.
She felt more like a grandmother than she did a aunt, honestly. There's times I'm wondering if Stan Lee actually intended to write Ben and May as his grandparents, or if
Hmm.
just Jack Kirby, because like Peter was like 15 in the original his original introduction, I think,
Hmm.
and so you're just also wondering how old Peter's parents were. What was the age difference between Uncle Ben and Peter's father?
Look, back in the day, Mima had like a whole bunch of kids, and there was a span. All
Oh yeah,
right, Mima was doing plenty.
but
So,
my point is, with the age difference that May
mhm.
has in the comics, she was almost became like an aunt to all the Avengers.
Aw, like
Yeah, no,
the cookie lady, the cookie mom.
yeah, very much so. And there's a great story during that era involving cookies that are just hilarious. I mean, she was like the kind of person who could like she put Wolverine in his place. Yeah, Wolverine comes in one day smoking a cigar, and she's just like, "No, we're not doing that." Takes a cigar, throws it away, and she's like, "You're gonna be showing manners and all this stuff." And Wolverine's just like, "I don't know what to do."
You're gonna do exactly what she says. That's what you're gonna
Exactly.
do. Because
Yeah.
May don't play apparently, but
But
also isn't she like looking Wolverine eye to eye? Like they're both pocket sized. Like
actually, I think she might have been a little bit taller than him, but I'm not sure.
okay,
I'd
well
have to look at the comic again. But
you know,
the point,
age does
the
things
point,
to your height.
yeah. The point is, it's just like Aunt May and Iron Man just kind of had a friendly, like, you're Peter's aunt, you're Peter's boss sort of thing.
Yeah.
But there were times where it's like May would tell off any of the Avengers who did something that she didn't agree with in regards to Peter,
Okay.
including Iron Man. Uh, and funny enough, she was actually dating Tony's butler during this story. This
Okay, May, get it?
it was a cute ship too. But then Civil War happened. Peter sold his
Okay.
marriage and the timeline, and May got healed after she got shot.
Okay.
But she also
Actually,
forgot.
we're gonna go ahead and cycle back because this
This is what
we've
happens when
mentioned
you
the
unleash me.
we've mentioned the storyline a couple of times, and now it's time for us to actually like get into it. The One More Day storyline, the most like wildly infamous storyline in the comics that they thankfully have not ported to the cinematic universes because
Eh,
I'm pretty sure we would not quite the same way.
Not the same way, but still kind of they did it. I mean, they did One More Day, but they cut out the more controversial parts of One More Day.
Yes, but I feel like working with Steven versus Mephisto. Anyway, so let's cycle back. Let's
Yeah.
explain what One More Day is. So, like, can you like in like less than 5 minutes give a synopsis of what the storyline is?
Well, you're tying my hands, but all right. So, One More Day takes
Brief
place.
synopsis overview.
Yeah, One More Day takes place during the Civil War event. And as I mentioned before, because Peter went public with his secret identity, his villains started to target him. In
Mhm.
particular, the Kingpin, who hired an assassin to kill Peter. The assassin missed and shot May.
Okay, so this wasn't Bullseye then, obviously.
I honestly can't remember which assassin it was.
If it was Bullseye, then I have a whole other like riot to
I mean,
like.
to be fair to even Bullseye, Peter, Spider Sense,
Yeah, but anyway, irrelevant. So May gets
Yeah.
shot. Then what?
And Peter can't handle it. Peter does not take it well because of course, Peter's big thing is, it's my fault. Everything is my fault. I am responsible for every bad thing that happens to me because with great power comes great responsibility, and he took it to the toxic level.
Everything is awful.
Yeah, ever since Ben died, he blames himself for everything that goes wrong, even if it's like not truly his fault. And because of the fact that he can't accept the fact that May is going to die, even though May is so friggin' old and constantly on the verge of death.
Old.
Literally, she is one spicy soup away from just keeling over half the time in the comics.
She's got her foot on a banana peel and she's one step away from that way. Again, because we're as a base level, if we're assuming that she's 50 years older than Peter or something, she's got to be 80 or something throughout a bunch of the story.
Yeah, that's a problem with making May so much older, because they kept trying to use illness as a reason to make Peter suffer in the comics, and it's just at some point you're just this woman kind of needs to just pass away because her health issues are insane.
Please just let her go. Ben has been waiting for her on the other side for a minute.
And the thing that kind of is really sad is that May has died a bunch of times in the comics. Yeah. They find a way to bring her back, but she's died several times now. Anyways, she is on the verge of death. Peter cannot handle it, so he starts trying to go to anybody who can try to help. The best doctors, magic users, all this stuff. And everyone's just this is a unfortunate natural death. There's not really anything we can do about this, which I'm saying it's bullshit, because it's the MCU. Come on.
I mean, nobody stays dead except for Bucky and Uncle Ben. Well,
Yeah, people used to say that about Jason Todd, Gwen Stacy, and also Bucky, and all three of those are back. I think Ben is the only one that's still dead.
If Ben comes back, I'm pretty certain that we're going to have to riot. That is an aggressively canon event.
Yeah.
That was a whole fight in Spider-Verse, which is admittedly Miles Morales, but the point is still stands.
Yeah. And, the thing is, Peter is at the end of his rope. He doesn't know what to do, and so who comes a-knocking? But Satan, kinda.
It's not Satan.
Satan-ish. I mean, the MCU unfortunately has a lot of hell dimensions and a lot of rulers of hell.
Yeah, and this one...
I mean, this one kind of inspired Satan, but so did Nightcrawler's father, quotation mark, Azazel. So did, bunch of others. So anyways, the point is...
Listen, I have heard entirely too many TV reviewers talking about how excited they were for the prospect of Mephisto to make an appearance for you to sit there and be like, I mean, he's just a guy.
But Mephisto shows up and, like the devil, offers a deal. I will save your Aunt May. I will erase anyone's memory of you being Spider-Man, but I don't want your soul. I want your marriage to Mary Jane.
Is he a weeping angel? He just I'm just gonna send you back into the past and let you live to death or something. What is this?
His whole thing was that he believed that the love between Peter and Mary Jane was so great, so powerful, that erasing that would be to God. Middle finger. Peter is seriously considering it, but the name One More Day is the one day that Mephisto gives Mary Jane and Peter to discuss this. And they decide, Mary Jane makes the decision, but Peter and Mary Jane agree to give up their marriage to save May, who again is constantly on the verge of death, and
old.
It's written so old that's eventually natural causes are going to happen.
Joe Biden thinks she's old.
Yeah, so they agree, and Mephisto follows through on his promise. He erases everyone's memory of Peter being Spider-Man. May is alive again, but Peter and
younger?
MJ no. I mean, no, but...
Younger, yes, but...
Some artists draw her less, wrinkled, aged, and they draw her maybe not, as old, but still, she's old.
Did he give her, the death becomes her potion or something?
No. No, she did not get to Marissa Tomei treatment.
Then, yeah.
And, and also he throws in a few extra things. So, Harry Osborn, who was dead, is resurrected. Peter and MJ did date, but they never got married, and stuff like that. And during this time, people were oh, well, hopefully this is just a temporary thing, and eventually Peter and Mary Jane will get back together, and, they'll defeat Mephisto's, thing.
Yeah.
This storyline came out, probably almost 20 years ago. It still has not been undone. To this day, Mary Jane and Peter are still not married. They keep getting back together, and then something happens that splits them apart again. Paul, you son of a bitch.
I can't do anything about that, but...
Yeah, no, it's there's a current storyline involving Mary Jane's current husband that nobody really likes.
I'm sorry, Mary Jane's current husband? Who is this person, and why is...
Let's just say his name is Paul, and he pisses everybody off. And, yeah, there's... It's a complicated story, and I don't think we have time for that. But let's just say
fair.
Nobody likes Paul.
I mean, ultimately, look, here's the thing. I am all for nostalgia, Peter. I love the idea of nostalgia. Nostalgia's great. But blowing up your marriage and ending up back where you lived in college instead of being a grown-up is certainly a choice.
Mm.
It's a choice.
Well, it's the problem with Peter Parker in general. And I
Hmm.
think that's, one thing that the comics keep doing, and it's part of the reason why people assume that father-son relationship with Peter, because the comics won't let comic book Peter develop beyond a
Hmm.
certain point. Anytime he has any kind of growth, marriage, the possibility of kids, a career, eventually they slap him back down to the status quo because the people writing the stories feel that if he becomes too much of an adult, he is no longer relatable. That is the reason why Mary Jane and Peter's marriage was divorced or destroyed. Because the writers thought that him being married aged him.
I mean, there are worse things in the world than not being a 17-year-old. 17-year-olds are notoriously stupid.
And that's the thing. But they felt like if they want to keep the audiences, like especially younger audiences, Peter has to be single. He has to be still kind of in that borderline college age, but not quite. And it's the reason why he's always regressing to a status quo of poor roommates and barely surviving. Like, I mean, it's like even at one point he created his own company, Parker Industries. He was a successful businessman. I mean, partially that involved Doc Ock and a bunch of body swapping stuff, but regardless, Peter had a company. He was maturing as an adult. He had finally succeeded as a scientist. Eventually, he lost his company. He ended up having to live with roommates again. He even got his doctorate revoked because allegedly he had stolen his stuff from Dr. Octopus.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's
I
like
I thought
Peter
that
is
the
not allowed.
Robins went through it. Like this
Yeah.
kid, this
Oh no, it's like anything that the Robins have been through, Peter has been through worse because the Robins more or less are allowed to grow up. Tim Drake notwithstanding, because Tim Drake has fallen into the Spider-Man trap. Keeps getting regressed back to an earlier state.
they were done doing that, or like they at least have like decided that Damien was going to be their aggressor. But okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's really
But
frustrating. Then why do like doesn't he? But isn't there a point at which Peter himself becomes a father, or is that just in like the?
unfortunately, it's not in the main universe. He almost became a father back in the 90s, but then the baby was either died in childbirth or was stolen. The plot never got followed up on. And meanwhile, in the main comic or in other stories, there was a series that they did a few years back where it was like an alternate universe if Peter and Mary Jane had not given up their marriage. They would have had a daughter named May.
Mhm.
There was also like the MU2 books back in the 90s where it was like following Spider Girl, who is Peter and Mary Jane's daughter, Mayday Parker.
Yeah,
The Spider-Verse, we have, adorable little Mayday
yeah.
right there.
I love that baby.
They revived the Ultimate Universe. It's not the same one that we had before. It's a new version.
Hmm.
And this new version, Peter is married already. He doesn't become Spider-Man until he's already married and has two kids. So him and Mary Jane have been living a good life together.
How
They
does he
have
have
a
time
son
to
and
be
daughter.
Spider-Man with two kids?
Well, that's the thing. He didn't become Spider-Man until he already had the kids. So the kids are now old enough to, not be so dependent on their parents. So they're like, I think maybe like 7 and 10 years old or something like that.
And they don't notice Daddy being out in the middle of the night?
Well, that's the thing. They know. I mean, Peter initially was trying to keep it a secret, but eventually the entire family knows. Mary Jane, May, and I think Ben? I forget the son's name. But yeah, they all know. They are all aware that he's living the dual life. They support him. Little May is the one who helped him come up with his costume. Mary Jane is like the best wife ever, where she, like, even before Peter tells her about becoming Spider-Man, he's like hedging whether or not to take on the Spider-Man mantle, and Mary Jane's just like, are you still gonna be a good husband? Are you still gonna be there for your kids? And she's like, well, yeah, that's not gonna change. And she's like, then do what you gotta do.
So Mary Jane is a model, right? Like professionally, like she's like a
In continuity, she is a model and actress. Yeah, and in this Ultimate Universe, I think she's more in the business end of like modeling and stuff like that.
okay.
I mean, I think she still did modeling. I will need to reread it because I've been like following it, but not closely.
Ha! I found
But
your weakness.
comics are expensive. But yeah, and it's like in the Ultimate Universe, unfortunately, Tony and Peter don't have any relationship. In fact, this is like a younger version of Tony Stark, I believe.
Hmm.
Like I say, it's only really in the MCU that we really get the Tony Peter dynamics. Tony being a father figure, not really a reoccurring thing, honestly, in the comics. He's been a mentor,
Hmm.
but he's always been very much like, I'm a selfish a-hole, and I need to return to my a-hole status quo because comics limit progression sometimes.
Fair. At least, in the comics, he's also not actually like married to Pepper in that same way. Isn't
No,
Pepper
Pepper.
married to like or something like
She was
that?
married to Happy at some point. I think either Happy died or they divorced or something like that. And they played around with Peter or with Pepper and Tony getting together, but it's never really followed through. And Tony's had a whirlwind of odd choices for partners over the years,
Yeah. Yeah.
including Trish Wildcat. Yeah,
Hmm.
Patty Walker, aka
Hmm.
Trish Walker, aka Wildcat.
Hmm.
Um, Emma Frost from the X-Men.
Nice.
Oh yeah, although that one was a complete accident.
Convincing Emma Frost to like say yes is already like, like a win in my book.
Well, to be fair, Convince was
He said yes, that's what matters. I mean, it does
yeah,
not, again, he's, a playboy, billionaire, philanthropist. Like, that's his whole thing is just like,
yeah,
you
and they
know,
maintained that in the comics. That's the thing. That's also part of the reason why, while Tony might occasionally take on a mentor role,
mhm.
it's rare to see him really step into a father role.
That's fair. So basically, if we want to sit there and see I Love You 3000, we're mostly just going to be replaying the old RDJ because I don't see Doom as being Mr. Dad Man.
I mean, who knows what they might do with Doom? Because I mean, Doom is a really good uncle, so he could possibly be a good father, possibly.
I mean, I suppose, but imagine being Doom's child. Like, that is so hard to live up to.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, I mean, like I say, the closest thing Doom has in the comics to a child is Valerie Richards, the daughter of Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman. And part of the reason why Doom loves her so much is because she is as smart and diabolical as he is. Like, she is one of the few people in any universe that he respects.
I mean, we're not talking about Squirrel Girl here, though. Like, I feel like Squirrel Girl deserves all of the respect. I'm pretty sure that Squirrel Girl has whipped up on Doom on more
Oh,
than one
he doesn't.
occasion.
He fears her. He doesn't respect her.
I'll take it. I'll take it. Squirrel Girl is amazing. I don't know when we're going to like have like a whole deep dive onto this lady, but
Yeah, she's got history. It's Iron Man related history too.
Squirrel Girl is fantastic. All right, so we are going to go ahead then and take a quick break while I figure out how it is that I can make everything about Squirrel Girl in the near future. So, welcome back to Up Your Nerd Cred. This week ahead is going to be a super busy one in the DC and or Marvel universes. Wait, how do you know? Well, DC Comics actually put out a whole calendar with canon dates for all kinds of birthdays and events, and Marvel actually put out a week-by-week look back for their 80th anniversary, which was interesting to find. It turns out this week we have the anniversary of Jean Grey's rise as the Phoenix for the first time in X-Men 101. We
And she'll do it
have
again and again and again and again.
and again and again. Honestly,
And
like
sometimes other people will rise as Phoenix as well.
she spends a lot of time like being the whole cosmic entity for just
You know,
like someone who's just
funny
your
enough,
average.
not as much as you would think, depending on like the story that's being told. It's weird. All I know is that these days the Phoenix gets around. Jean is not the only consistent host. But it
Well,
all started today, all those years
Jean
ago.
and Phoenix have been having have had problems. So if Phoenix is driven into the arms of another mutant, I mean, because
And
Jean
sometimes
keeps
not even
rejecting
mutants.
Phoenix. I mean, if Jean's going to keep rejecting the Phoenix, eventually, like, Phoenix is going to have to go into somebody else's arms.
I'm just saying, at
Possibly.
this point, the Phoenix Force is the mutant equivalent of HPV. If you've been sexually active in the MCU or in the Marvel Universe, you might have Phoenix. And yes, it burns when you pee.
I mean, I'm sure there are antibiotics for it, maybe, though. So we also have within this week the anniversary of Deadpool's first solo issue being released. Deadpool: The Circle Chase #1. And unlike the DC front, the pre-crisis version of Clark Kent, this week we have the anniversary of the day that he landed on Earth. So
Yay!
go team. We've got a whole bunch of people who are coming here and doing interesting things and being interesting people. Honestly, like I really gotta like cycle back though to like how is like the Phoenix, how are Jean Grey and the Phoenix broken up? That does not make sense. That's like sitting there saying that like Cyclops and Jean Grey aren't together, which I guess we already established is kind of a thing, so never mind.
Well, it's like Jean's story with the Phoenix is all weird. It's a lot of retcons and changes and then expansions of the mythology.
Mm-hmm.
Because originally it was Jean got possessed by the Phoenix Force.
Mm-hmm.
Then it turned out that she'd never been possessed. She'd actually been put into a healing coffin, and the Phoenix created a body to pose as Jean Grey. But then when the Phoenix died, because Jean's soul convinced it to not go crazy anymore, created the Maddie clone. Then it was the
Yeah,
Jean
no,
became
nothing.
Phoenix, and then essentially, long story short, the new mythology is Jean and Phoenix are one being. They always have been one being. They are a circle of time where one creates the other in some metaphysical cosmic sense, and that
Uh,
they are still on some levels two separate beings, but at the same time they're the same being.
Somehow she is she who remains, but okay. All right.
Essentially, it's like it's very complicated. If you have time to read through all the stories, it makes sense. But when you try to describe it, it's like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, that's fair. So, is there anything coming out this week that you're excited about? I know 28 Years Later is coming out, but I haven't watched 28 Days Later or 28 Months Later, so I probably won't watch that. But Elio looks cute though. I'm the
Yeah,
kid becoming an ambassador from Earth by accident.
yeah, that one looks cute. I'm not 100% sure if it's going to be, one of Disney's true classics.
Meh, they can't all be winners.
Well, that's the thing that kind of sucks because it's like it looks like it's a really good film,
Mm-hmm.
but it does feel like a lot of times where they try to expand into sci-fi
Mm-hmm.
doesn't always work for Disney in these animated films as much. Treasure Planet.
On the sci-fi front, though, Spaceballs: The Search for More Money is coming out at some point in like I think 27.
I have not
Oh,
seen the trailer for that yet. I need to watch it.
well, get on it. It's
I'm honestly surprised they're doing a sequel. I mean, I know it was always joked about, but I'm still surprised.
yeah, well, it's apparently been 38 years since the original came out.
I wonder how
They
many shots they're gonna take at the sequels for Star Wars.
I desperately need you to go and watch the trailer. So hopefully you will have seen it by the time we get together next week. But unfortunately, listeners, we have come to the end of our podcast. And I know you're clearly devastated about it. How is this over so soon? Well, good news! Our next episode is going to be coming out on June 27th. And realistically speaking, you're always welcome to listen to this episode again if that's not fast enough.
Nerd cred takes time to build.
Yeah, but it's why we gotta teach the kids young. I remember when I was a kid, my dad used to watch all the movies and I'd come because I was like the right age for terrible 90s versions of things, but I can't show my kid the Ninja Turtles from back then. It terrified
Says
him.
who?
Did you see what those outfits look like?
They were awesome.
There were eyes that were popping out of that turtle's mouth.
Only if you stop to pause on it. And
Cowabunga it is.
I mean, at some point you're probably gonna have to show them some, less than ideal Marvel movies. I mean, Madam Web still exists, remember? That's pretty terrifying.
Yeah, you say Madam Web as though Iron Man 3 doesn't exist. The whole Extremis saga in that movie was terrible. The Deus Ex Machina was terrible. And our world's worst human is canonically Pierce with Tony Stark in there. Ew! Like, I know everyone in MCU is mad that Erskine didn't, like, fully write down, like, all of his notes for, like, his super soldier serum. But I'm so mad that I paid full price for that one instead of waiting till streaming.
Yeah, I mean, but the Extremis storyline was considered a pretty popular storyline for Iron Man, and it's not surprising that they tried to make it into the MCU. And honestly, I mean, the Sony Spider-Man films exist, so I'm just gonna say Iron Man 3 wasn't the worst thing that ever existed.
Yeah, I fully believe you, but
I mean,
also
Morbius, Madam Web,
I hated it the most of any Marvel movie I've ever seen.
Craven.
I said what I said.
Didn't you watch the Howard the Duck and 1992 Captain America movies?
And I hate the Iron Man 3 movie so much. It is so
And And now it's time to mention that we have an Instagram at Up Your Nerd Cred Pod. We're on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. And if you have a burning question that you want us to discuss, you can hit us up on our platforms. Make sure you like and subscribe, leave comments, and if we pick your question, we'll shout you out at the discussion segment.
Also, please make sure to get your friends to also like and subscribe to the pod, and your family members, and those coworkers that you trust not to be weird about you listening to the same podcast as you, and you know.
And good night, everybody.